I need a suit.
Suit? You take care of the suit. I'll take care of the music.
Spider-Man Far From Home has arrived, and it's at an odd place in the MCU. It's technically set in Phase 3, but come on, this is basically a Phase 4 film. Overall, I have to say this film was excellent, with fantastic acting, humor, and visuals, though there were a few problems Endgame gave this movie, and I'll talk about those in a bit. But before we go in, there will be spoilers, so be ye warned. First off, the acting. I know MCU movies usually have the cream of the crop in this regard, but personally I felt the performances in this movie were stronger than quite a few other MCU films. Tom Holland is amazing as Spider-Man, and the supporting cast were strong, memorable, and really funny. Ned makes a hilarious sidekick for Spider-Man, and his short-lived romance during the film made for some of the most comedic parts of the movie. I have to say, I wasn't the biggest fan of MJ in Homecoming or my first viewing of this movie, though she did grow on me a bit the second time I watched it. Peter's teachers were hilarious, and even Flash Thompson was likable. Honestly though, the real star here is Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio. He's easily in my top 10 favorite MCU villains now. He was threatening, intelligent, and he boasts a scene in the middle of the film with visuals so spectacular that I might even call it one of the best MCU scenes ever. If you've seen this film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even though he ended up being grounded in reality, the scenes in the front of the movie where he was, quote-unquote, battling the elementals were honestly amazingly shot, choreographed, and acted. Plus, the suit was pretty awesome. Yeah, acting was really solid. A lot of great character moments, too. From Happy and Aunt May's budding romance to Happy encouraging Peter, and even a scene where Peter gets to explain his frustrations to Mysterio. Slower, heartfelt moments like these are why Far From Home is such a good movie, and that applies to the MCU as a whole. The best example is when Peter is making his own suit, and Happy gives him a quick grin, obviously thinking back to Tony doing the same thing. It's such a small moment, but it's why people love the MCU characters so much. The film focuses mainly on Peter, much like the classic Spider-Man 2, which Far From Home emulates in multiple ways, even though it never felt like a ripoff. I also appreciate how this film was able to stay lighthearted, yet take itself seriously. Ant-Man and the Wasp failed in this for the most part. It was a full-blooded comedy. And because of that, it wasn't able to create the same sense of scale that Far From Home possesses. Far From Home is a very funny movie, but there's many scenes where the jokes take a back seat, and make it some really good drama as well. In my opinion, this film is probably one of the best balanced MCU films we have. When it's time for a joke, the film makes a joke. When it's time for the jokes to stop and Peter to kiss MJ, the jokes will stop and Peter will kiss MJ. Its sense of restraint is lacking with other MCU movies like Thor Ragnarok, which would ruin some serious scenes to make a joke, which annoyed me to a degree with that movie. The fan service in this movie was through the roof, nearly as much as Endgame. Things are referenced, people from all the way back in Phase 1 return, and there's dozens of Easter eggs and hidden secrets from Spider-Man lore. Plus, there was an unforgettable cameo in the first end credits scene. The humor in this movie was on point. There are so many great jokes and dialogue. I'd go so far as to call this film a comedy, and a lot of it comes from Ned and even Nick Fury, surprisingly. The action in this movie was some of the best Spider-Man action scenes we've ever got. The fight on London Bridge was just spectacular. Spider-Man does some real comic book level ridiculous stunts, and it was thrilling to watch. Also, plenty of superhero landings. Spider-Man dodges bullets, slings webs, acrobats through the air, and lands some hand-to-hand combat too, thanks to his Spidey sense. Sorry, I mean his Peter Tingle. Man, did that line annoy me in the film. Anyway, yeah, the action was great, and the choreography was nearly as good as The Winter Soldier, which still has the best MCU choreography. However, the best action scene in the film, which I already referenced, was Mysterio's illusion scene in the warehouse. This scene. It's hands down the best scene in the movie, maybe even one of the best scenes in the MCU. It's filled with insanely good visuals, and even though Mysterio is doing cliched villain monologue in the back, it sounded way scarier alongside the haunting illusions. From the pile of Spider-Man that ganged up on Peter, the zombie Iron Man suit, the shattering black glass, Mysterio killing MJ, it was just so incredibly well shot and thought out. Also, another Easter egg, the spider that crawls out of Tony's mask was a Black Widow, just in case you missed it. Overall, the action was incredibly good, even by MCU standards, and that illusion scene alone raises the bar super high for future MCU films. So overall, the film is absolutely amazing. It hits some super high notes, and honestly is a really feel-good movie, which is pretty darn refreshing after the emotionally crushing finale of Avengers Endgame. However, as much as I loved it, and I really did love it, I saw it twice, it still isn't perfect. and most of the flaws have to do with the aftermath of Endgame, not necessarily about the movie itself. First off, quickly, I have to say that the music in this movie was pretty underwhelming. The original Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie may not have been perfect, but man did it have a great musical score. The soaring music track during the opening credits is probably my favorite superhero theme of all time. The music in this movie is nothing special. It's a bit disappointing since we have so many great Spider-Man themes. Next up is Peter's dynamic with Iron Man. I realize that Tony was set up to be the MCU's version of Uncle Ben, but that dynamic just doesn't really work with Spider-Man. It's great that Peter has the tech and the allies, but he's just not Iron Man. Spider-Man is Marvel's most beloved character because he's human, humble, relatable, and purely heroic. Iron Man is a darker character. He isn't totally pure, he isn't all that relatable, and even though he's human and heroic, he still has an inescapable dark side that Spider-Man lacks for the most part. Spider-Man just doesn't need the burden to live up to Iron Man. It makes Peter feel less complete, if that makes sense. It's like he's not a total hero unless he can become Iron Man, which he shouldn't need to. Spider-Man is a full-fledged hero all on his own. He's Marvel's flagship character. I don't think he should be compared to Tony Stark, and I hope they drop this plotline in the next Spider-Man movie and let him be a hero on his own, which, honestly, I'm pretty sure that they will. Lastly, the aftermath of Endgame made some serious problems. The movie addresses the return of half the world's population and how everyone's ages were screwed up, but once they're addressed, they're never brought up again, really. If half the world's population suddenly disappeared and then reappeared 5 years later, the consequences would be absolutely catastrophic. Governments would be in chaos, the economy would come crashing to the ground, families would be in a tailspin, workers and production would be in serious trouble, and overall, it would probably start the apocalypse while the planet recovered. A lot of paperwork. But the film treats it like they just reappeared and ta-da, it's all fixed now. That'd be nice, but that's way too easy. I realize that would be way too big to even capture in a recap at the start of the film, but it's a little jarring how simple it all sounded. Not much I can say about it though, there's really nothing else that the movie could do. So there you guys go. I have to say the film, even with its problems, was a really good movie. I definitely give this one a big thumbs up. Now we just have to wait over a year until we can watch the next MCU film. Hopefully DC makes something in the meantime. Thanks for watching my review of Spider-Man Far From Home. If you guys enjoyed, then leave a like, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.